The American Cotton Shippers Association, also known as ACSA, is a trade association primarily made up of cotton merchants, founded in 1924. ACSA members manage the majority of the world's cotton trade, providing services of merchandising, delivery logistics, and risk management to their customers. ACSA will be holding its 101st annual convention in Palm Beach, Florida in June of 2025. For more information on ACSA, including their convention, view their website or Twitter account at Cotton Shippers.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. Now, depending on where you are in the cotton belt today, planters are rolling hard to get this year's crop in the ground, and they're doing that either to make up for some time lost due to weather issues or to beat their insurance deadlines that are coming up here pretty quickly. And if you've been trying to catch up in the Mid-South, well, past 5 days have not been your friends down here with storm after storm after storm. Beck, I don't know how things are at your house, but it's still pretty darn wet.
Man, it's too soggy. It's miserable over here. We can't get outside. It's been, you know how it is, Jim. It's been 5 days of rain here in Memphis, here in East Memphis, and there's more. I think Saturday is the first little sunshine emoji I have on my iPhone weather app, which I'm sure everybody listening will know is about as unreliable as you can be. Please don't sue me, Apple. But the forecast ain't great, is what I'm trying to tell you, and I'm about over it, man. I there's only so long I can sit inside.
We'll take that sunshine emoji over the weekend because at least that kind of leads the way into next week's forecast, which again, take it with a grain of salt, but it looks a bit more favorable over the next week, and it's still folks are still within the planting window, so hopefully we'll see how things end up.
These guys are trying to plant. I mean, cry me a river. You know, I'm getting antsy because I need to get outside. But I know many of our listeners are saying, "Hey, I've never been able to plant, and the window's coming to a close." So yes, we want sunshine.
Definitely. Well, speaking of planting, we've got growers out in the high plains of Texas that are finally off and running to get their cotton crop in the ground out there in the world's biggest cotton patches, as they like to call it. And for the first time in a few years, they're going out there with some decent moisture and some good temperatures. And I think really feels like for the first time in forever, no indication of drought in that key cotton area showed up on the U.S. Drought Monitor last week. So that was a very pleasant surprise. And we're going to talk about that High Plains area today with Kody Bessent, who is Chief Executive Officer of Plains Cotton Growers in Lubbock. We're also going to visit a bit about some of the recent proposed legislation and actions in Washington, D.C., and their potential impact on the cotton industry in our discussions with Kody, and we'll get to that in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, looking forward to that one, Jim. But first, we got just a couple of news items to share, newsy stuff. Following the release of the Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA, I think is how they say it, Commission's report on May 22nd, that report specifically called into question glyphosate and atrazine, two widely used crop protection products, as our listeners will no doubt be aware. The National Cotton Council released a statement in response expressing the cotton industry's disappointment with parts of the report regarding pesticide safety. Now, in that statement, the NCC noted that for decades, the EPA has subjected pesticides to rigorous review and eliminated those deemed unsafe. Currently approved products have been tested and retested to protect the farmer, the environment, and consumers, the NCC argues. NCC Chairman Patrick Johnson, himself a producer, said that cotton producers have made significant strides in conscientious pesticide usage, noting that crop protection tools are vital for the continued sustainability of family farms in the U.S. Regarding the report's comments on microplastics, Johnson added that cotton is a natural fiber that is a healthy alternative to synthetic microfibers such as polyester. To quote Johnson, he says, it is unfortunate that the commission focused more on products that are known to be safe rather than on hazards such as microplastics shed from synthetic clothing that our children can breathe. We urge U.S. agencies to continue to allow sound science to guide future policy decisions, and America's cotton industry needs a seat at the table in this effort going forward. So, interesting stuff there, and a nice response, in my opinion, from the National Cotton Council.
It is, and the National Cotton Council was one of a number of industry associations, as you can imagine, that had some reactions and comments uh, to that section of the Maha report. Interestingly enough, apparently it's had a little bit of impact because this morning I was seeing some references to that report and to that committee saying that they would be more than happy to have the agricultural industry a bit more involved in the decision process moving forward. So uh, sometimes sometimes a little pushback helps.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to linger here. We got another news item to get to, but yeah, I wish that we could send Joe Nicosia's report from the Gin Show about the amount of microplastics that
Right.
people are finding inside the human body and inside, not to be gross, but inside the human brain. That needs to be a bigger deal than it is in the national sort of collective mind here in the U.S. And we need to be the ones that are shouting it from the mountaintops.
Yes.
Anyhow, let's move on from there. We could talk about it all day, but let's move on. So let's get into a little bit of crop progress, taking a quick look at USDA crop progress numbers that were released yesterday, May 27. Overall, 52% of this year's crop has now been planted. That's up 12 percentage points in the past week, but still 4 points below the 5-year average. Out of the 15 cotton producing states, 12 have shown double digit growth in planting in the past week, ranging from a 26-point jump in Kansas to a 2-point increase in Arizona, where planting is essentially complete. And since we're going to be talking about Texas in a few minutes, planting in the Lone Star State jumped 12 points in the past week. That's up to 47% planted. Much of that movement coming in the High Plains area where we have noted or will note they've been getting some rain here. So very thankful for that.
Well, thanks, Beck. And with that info in mind, let's turn our focus to the high plains of Texas and bring Kody Bessent, who's CEO of Plains Cotton Growers in Lubbock, into our virtual studio. Been a while since we've had a chance to visit, Kody, so thanks for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to join y'all. Appreciate y'all's advocacy and y'all's support of the industry as well.
Well, we try. We try. Let's kind of start with the status of this year's cotton crop out in West Texas. I looked at the drought index map last week and was pleased to see no colors on the high plains for the first time in a long time. So that's got to feel hopeful right now. And then from what I understand, your area's had several rounds of some welcome moisture, at least enough it seems to get a crop in and started. So what is the current status of planting out there, and how are your member growers feeling about this year's crop?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag, depending on where you're at. As far as the planting conditions, we're certainly very appreciative of the moisture that we've received. We're in a lot better shape than where we were this last year and probably even the previous year as far as setting up for planting conditions. As you get kind of through our service area, we serve the upper 42 counties, as most people know, in the Panhandle and Southern High Plains of Texas. The Panhandle is pretty well done with planting. Their planting deadline is actually May 31st. And then as you kind of move further south through Plainview, the Lubbock area, their planting deadline is coming up in the first week of June. And then as you move further south through Dawson County on toward Midland, the Odessa area, their planting deadline is about the second or third week of June. Um, for the most parts, growing conditions are reputable. That being said, we have seen some areas probably in the upper panhandle probably put in more corn as compared to cotton just because of where price comparative differences are at, where people have stronger watering conditions, better agronomic conditions. As you move further south, we're still seeing a lot more cotton being considered. There's still a lot to be desired and be transpired in regard to cotton planting conditions going into the end of the month and on in the first part of June. But overall, most people are pretty aggressive as far as planting the crop and planting it into some wet soil, something we haven't seen in the last couple of years. As you get further south of Lubbock, it's a little bit different. That soil texture is a little bit more sandy, and so even though they've had some rain conditions, that soil tends to dry out a little bit more faster. Certainly has succumbed to some of the more heavy wind related conditions that they've seen, and so they're kind of mindful of when they're going to plant and how much they can plant overall. But um, overall, we average about 3.5 million acres that we'll plant on the Panhandle, Southern High Plains of Texas. I don't expect that to change too much. We're probably going to see a little bit less than that just because of cropping conditions, crop rotations, and then also because of pricing conditions as well. But certainly not much below where we are from the historical average in general.
Mhm. Well, I know you mentioned corn, and yes, I'd heard that quite a bit of corn had gone in up in the Panhandle. Um, what other crops are folks looking at this year? I know sorghum's always gonna be on the radar screen. Anything else that they're trying this year?
Yeah, certainly sorghum is something that's kind of a favorable crop. It's a good rotational crop that people are looking at, but also too, folks are looking at taking wheat to harvest and then letting that ground lay fallow, putting some cattle out on it if they can find them. So trying to explore whatever options they can to be profitable in such a diminished atmosphere that we've seen from a pricing condition standpoint.
Mhm. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we can get a crop in. I mean, everything I've seen, everybody's looking at a much lower abandonment rate this year, so that's always hopeful from the beginning. But we'll see where the weather goes. That's always the eternal issue right there.
No doubt. And that's the name of the game is the less abandonment, the more producers have as far as production that they can make on their profitability standpoint, or at least break even. But also it helps our downstream infrastructure that has been succumbed to a lot of challenges the last couple of years, like a lack of crops. So helping in a volume standpoint for gins and warehouses and merchants,
Yeah,
we're very mindful of that too.
it would be good to slow the domino process down a little
It
bit.
would. Yes, sir.
Make a lot of people feel a lot better. Uh, well, I know you stay really connected with all the ag policy work that's going on with cotton, not only in Texas, but certainly on the federal level as well. Working along with the NCC and other association staffs. I'm going to admit, right now it's all a little confusing. To me, it sure seems that way. Uh, on one hand, we've got a House reconciliation bill, that one big beautiful bill that includes a whole lot of the improved crop insurance and safety net provisions that agriculture's been looking for several years of the farm bill debates. And on the other hand, we have the Make America Healthy Again report that came out last week. It includes some pesticide related items that are a little difficult for cotton and other commodities to accept on their face value. Uh, and of course, from what if I'm reading things correctly, our farm bill now appears to be stalled again, just from a Democrat versus Republican basis. It's a lot to unpack, obviously, but from your perspective, where's all this going right now, and kind of what are the next steps? Uh,
So that is a lot to unpack. The great thing about our democracy is the fact that it does take a little bit of a sludge to get to a final base product, and that is something that our founding fathers developed strategically, and quite frankly, it's smart. Just given where some of the politics play on either side. But as far as the farm bill process goes, so we did have the budget reconciliation, this big beautiful bill that was passed out of the House on a pretty narrow margin. It did contain a lot of the plus ups that we have been advocating for the better part of almost 2.5, 3 years now between us, Natural Cotton Council, and other advocacy based groups collectively together. So a plus up in a reference price that's more nominal to meet the demands of producers and their input cost, plus ups in the marketing assistance loan, enhancements to the crop insurance portfolio that we have all advocated for to make sure that we're meeting the demands of today. And granted, our agricultural system, our overall system changes more rapidly today than it has in my lifetime, and so we're trying to meet those demands moving forward. So that was passed in the House reconciliation bill. It's over in the Senate now. Granted, the Senate is a different dynamic. They have a few different makeups as far as the political leadership, just given the narrow margins there. And so they're going to have to figure out how to work through those challenges to maintain and enhance our foreign policy portfolio that we're asking for, but also to meet some of the other uh, political dynamics that they have to in order to muster up and be able to pass the bill to the Senate, essentially. So that's one thing to kind of unpack. The second thing you mentioned, as far as the Maha report, certainly the administration, commissioned this report to try to go through and do a deep dive of health and analysis. We're still trying to kind of digest that report, but in general, one thing that I would say that's positive that came out of the report, and something that we as an agricultural and a cotton industry specifically have been very focused on, is the notion of microplastics. And they reference
Uh-huh.
that very specifically in the report of how damaging microplastics are to human health. And we've done a lot of study, a lot of uh, advocacy, and a lot of information that we have tried to put out as an industry of how people can be more conscious about how they're consuming products, and especially clothing-based products, where we're a more natural-based fiber as compared to man-made synthetics. And that we try to compete against. And so that's one positive thing that came out of the study. Certainly, they reference, as most people are aware of, that's sort of a little bit of a obtuse angle, is the health aspect on herbicides and pesticides. I will address that, and the fact that there's a long-standing history from a scientific-based standpoint of how pesticides and herbicides go through the regulatory-based process through EPA to get registered, so producers can use them in a efficient and a correct scientific based manner on label. We're very supportive of that, and so I hope that the as the commission continues to go forward and evaluate their overall evaluation, that they sort of kind of take a step back and really review the fact of how important these chemistry-based tools are for production agriculture. And it not only helps from a yield-based standpoint, but also from a health-based standpoint, because we're not having all these other obtuse issues that may come up within a growing season, from weed combativeness to quality-based issues that we may see in our food and fiber. There's a reason and a mechanism of why we have these quality-based tools, and they're important to maintain.
It is, again, when you look at everything that's happened here in the last 2 weeks, it's almost like wave after wave after wave of information. The good part in all of this is, like you said, from the microplastics perspective, is we might finally be in a position to have like a coalition or something built in terms of promoting natural fibers, not just cotton, but other natural fibers working together and all of this, which I think would be a very strong argument. I'm starting to see a little bit more emphasis or a little bit more discussion from a lot of different fronts on it. And I noticed too that there's a potential bill that may be introduced. I think it's what's called the Buying American Cotton Act that I think is looking for some sponsors to get it in. But are you familiar with that?
I am. The overall goal with the Buy America Cotton Act is to entice domestic-based businesses to utilize and source domestic cotton, as well as companies that may source cotton that we export overseas to bring it back into the U.S. and utilize it as a U.S. derived based product. Uh, there's some tax incentives to it. That's the main focus of it. Hopefully, it'll be kind of entangled into the tax reform provisions that we're seeing kind of move through the House and the Senate at the same time. But it's a great bill. It'll help really kind of build some of the domestic industry overall and preserve some of the domestic cotton industry overall, as we're looking at in a worldwide or geopolitical kind of atmosphere where we're being competed against from countries like Brazil or other countries. This should provide some mechanism for our textile industry, be it U.S. and abroad, to be able to compete relatively on a level playing field and entice them to want to do business in the U.S.
That'd be great. That would be, I think that's something the industry has been looking for and searching for quite a while. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that one gets to the starting line and moves through pretty quickly. Well, Cody, obviously there's still a lot of things swirling around this year's industry. And as we've discussed, it's hard to keep track of all of it right now. We're going to keep our fingers crossed for a few more timely rains for you guys and maybe a more moderate summer. If you could keep it in that 80 to 90 degree weather range, I think people would be happy.
I'll do my best. Just keep rain and go to church, I guess, is the best way to put it. So
That's,
your power, maybe the rain too.
yeah, your growers out there deserve a break after the last couple of years. But anyway, thanks for joining us, Kody. We appreciate it. We'll be talking with you again soon.
Appreciate y'all very much. Appreciate the industry. It's been a tough couple of years, the last 3 years, and certainly we're due for a good year. And hopefully this will be the mark that sets us forward. So
Great. Sounds great. Thanks, Kody.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. Thanks again to Kody Bessent for visiting with us today, and thanks to the American Cotton Shippers Association for their sponsorship. As always, thanks to you too, dear listener, for joining us and for your continuing support. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did like what you heard, please be sure to spread the word and tell your friends and farming neighbors about the Cotton Companion podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower
The
Magazine.
Cotton Companion podcast is produced by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman, he's Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks with another episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, keep those planters rolling and stay safe.
'Cause God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer.